A Koch-backed right-wing group used sketchy and potentially illegal means to try to trick Ohio public school teachers into dropping their union membership. This story is insane. It is absolutely outrageous. Teachers are unsurprisingly infuriated over this. And so let's give you the details. So this has to do with Ohio teachers. They recently got something in the mail, a notice in the mail telling them that they were owed a credit from their union. Now, as we all know, you pay dues for your union, so maybe they were under the assumption that they overpaid or something and that they were owed some sort of credit. Now, Melissa Cropper, who's president of the 20,000 member Ohio Federation of Teachers, was listed as the sender in this notice. Remember that, because she wasn't actually the sender of this notice. She did not send anything, but she was listed as the person who sent it. Now, all educators had to do was fill out this attached form and then mail it back for an apparent refund. Except the notice didn't actually come from Cropper or the union, okay? It came from the Freedom Foundation, which is a conservative group whose mission is to get teachers and other public sector workers to drop their union membership. I wonder if they've done any of this with the police unions. I'm gonna venture to say that they haven't, but I could be wrong. Anyway, but let me continue. By signing it, a teacher would be authorizing the Freedom Foundation to renounce their union membership. But again, you wouldn't know that unless you really took the time to read through everything, including the fine print at the very end of the notice, okay? So here's what it looked like. This is a image of the notice that they received. It looks like they're gonna get a pretty decent refund, $874. So they're like, nice, okay, great, that's some money in my pocket. The union is sending me this notice. They're saying that I'm owed $874. So great, looking forward to it. But on the bottom half of the page in fine print, it reads as follows. Effective immediately, I resign any membership I may have in all levels of the American Federation of Teachers, including the Ohio Federation of Teachers. I authorize the Freedom Foundation to transmit this notice to to OFT or my employer on my behalf, okay? So Randy Weingarten, who is the president of the American Federation of Teachers, says that teachers are obviously upset about this. They're very angry. She believes that the group crossed a legal line this time by listing Cropper as the sender of the document. I mean, there are laws against that, right? It's fraud, identity theft, all of those issues come to play. It's unclear whether they're gonna suffer any consequences. Weingarten says they lie all the time and their MO is to divide and divide and divide. This one was a complete fraud. Weingarten said that the mailer made it seem as though the union's own leader was encouraging people to drop the union. The Freedom Foundation declined to answer any questions from reporters who reached out to them about this mailer campaign, but a spokesperson for the group defended the mailer, saying this. Freedom Foundation informs public employees, including teachers, of their constitutional right to leave their unions and stop paying dues because unions like AFT fail to do so. Really, you think that the teachers don't know that they can drop the union if they want? You really think they're that stupid, that they're completely unaware? By the way, my husband just joined a teachers union because he's now working at a school. And the union made abundantly clear that you can be part of the union without even having to pay dues. I obviously forced him to pay, I didn't have to force him, I told him you're gonna pay your dues because you want the union to be strong and you want them to have the resources to fight if a fight occurs with the employer here, right? But he's fully aware that he might not even have to pay, right? Like he doesn't even have to be part of the union if he doesn't want to. Of course the teachers know, they don't need a right-wing Koch-funded organization to tell them that. So this excuse is nonsense. But anyway, Ashley Varner, who's the spokesperson here, continues. The communication with teachers in Ohio was neither fraudulent nor misleading. Randy Weingarten's claims are simply untrue. Nonetheless, the Freedom Foundation backed down from using the mailers after receiving a cease and desist notice from the American Federation of Teachers. The foundation agreed not to send any more of these mailers and assured the AFT that it hadn't distributed any outside of Ohio. Now, the union's general counsel, Dan McNeil, said in a letter to the foundation that its reliance on trickery and deception to further its insidious goals is not only morally repugnant, it is also unlawful. McNeil alleged that the effort ran afoul of both trademark law and identity fraud statutes, and that it amounted to federal mail fraud. Freedom Foundation executive Vice President Brian Minnick wrote in a response that the group respectfully disagrees, of course they do, and that the letter was meant to deceive teachers. Like, he says, no, it wasn't meant to deceive teachers. Although the letter's sender was listed as the union president, he says that the return envelope and tear-off form clearly indicated the return would go to the foundation. So, look, listing this as coming from someone when it wasn't actually coming from that person is obviously fraud. I don't know if they're gonna face any legal ramifications for it, but I am curious what you think, Woz.
I mean, it's a joke. It's obvious the Kochs and their ilk are some of the most vicious union busting outfits in American existence, right? Like, so obviously these are anti-union folks, but I mean, they give the game away when they have to perform a trick, when they have to do, basically pull a rabbit out of a hat in order to get workers to think to themselves, hey, I don't want to be in the union. Instead of positioning their position just point blank and say, hey guys, look, you're gonna be so much better off as an independent contractor. You're gonna get so much more money. You're gonna accrue so many more benefits. You're gonna be so much better at your job. You'll have so much better job security. Like, none of those things are true. So they could never position that argument that way, right? And so it just shows you that, because if they did have the right of way, they could just position whatever they think about, their anti-union views. They could just lay it out plain and simple. I'm sure there's plenty of smart people at the freaking Freedom Foundation. They wouldn't do that because they know any sensible teacher trying to understand what it would be like to go up against, whoever it be, the state, whoever, in their fight to make their schools as good as they possibly could be, and thereby making their jobs as good as possible. They know going it alone would never work. Going in there, being excellent, paying for your own supplies, doing all of that stuff. You wouldn't go in there and try to negotiate and say, hey guys, I was this good, you should pay me this much. It would never happen. They can only get these gains collectively.
Yeah, I mean, there's power in numbers. There's power in withholding your labor in order to get what you want. And without union representation, you don't have the protection or the organizing necessary to make that happen. And so, look, if what this Koch-backed group says is true, if all they were trying to do was provide knowledge, valuable information to these teachers so they can make the best possible decision for themselves, then they wouldn't have dishonestly listed someone who did not send the mailer as the person sending the mailer. But that is exactly what they did, because they are dishonest, and it was an attempt to trick these teachers in dropping their union membership. And the teachers aren't having it, because guess what? They like being represented by the union. So I'm glad that they figured out what was going on. I'm glad that counsel representing the union reached out with the cease and desist, and they claimed that they're no longer gonna send the mailers out. But look, I mean, I couldn't just pretend to be someone I'm not and send out letters or notices purporting to be someone I'm not, right? That is considered fraud. And so what does the law say? So based on federal law, it seems like what they did should qualify as illegal. So 18 USC 1342 makes it a federal crime to use or assume any fictitious, false, or assumed title, name, or address in conjunction with sending or receiving mail to carry out fraudulent schemes or other unlawful business. Now that's on a federal level. What about Ohio state law? Well, it states that no person without the express or implied consent of the other person shall use, obtain, or possess any personal identifying information of another person with intent to represent the other person's personal identifying information as the person's own personal identifying information. Look, do I think anyone's actually going to pursue legal consequences for what this group did? Probably not. But they broke the law, and it's incredibly gross. They will stop at nothing to decimate workers' unions. And in this case, they specifically targeted teachers.
Hey, thanks for watching that video. We really appreciate it, guys. And we appreciate it if you become members, because that allows us to be independent, honest, progressive, all the things that you don't get from corporate media. And all of that is because of you guys. Hit the join button below and become one of us. Become a Young Turk.